Hello, this is Stephen Hour, and we are back with another Batman movie review. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be reviewing Batman Forever. Now, before we get into the cast and the plot, we need to get through some history, because there is a lot of history to immediately unpack here. Now, as you may recall, in 1992, Batman Returns was released, the second Batman film to be directed by Tim Burton. Now, this is where a lot of things began to change in the Batman film series. Now, although the film was decently successful at the box office, it did get negative reactions at the time for being too dark for kids, and this was especially due to McDonald's, promoting the film, and most importantly, it didn't make enough money compared to the first one. Now, Tim Burton was planned to ultimately direct the third film in the lineup, which was supposed to be titled Batman Continues. Very original. And obviously, villains that he planned to use was Two-Face and the Riddler. However, Warner Brothers felt uneasy with the darker tone he wanted to continue with, considering how Batman Returns was. So there was talks of kind of downplaying the darkness. However, Tim Burton realized they really didn't want him to be the director of the third one. So he left the project. And also following him was Michael Keaton, because he didn't want to do a more lighter tone picture, so he too left. As a result, Warner Brothers then got Joel Schumacher to direct the third film. Now, it should be noted, Joel did go to Tim Burton and asked for his permission to direct it. See, because he said he would never do it unless Tim Burton, wasn't fine with it. But Tim Burton said, it's all yours, go for it, do your own thing. As a result, Joel Schumacher would have a different style to his film. It wouldn't be so much dark gothic architect. True, this film would still retain some of the darker elements from the first two, but there would be a more lighter, not light as the Adam West show, but a bit more lighter, kid-friendly, if you will, with a neon setting and almost a Greek architect, which honestly I thought actually works pretty well. And with a new cast, with some new cast members, such as a new Batman cast, was Val Kilmer. And, of course, they were introducing Robin. This would be, ultimately, Robin was planned to be kind of introduced in Batman Returns, but things never happened. Same with, believe it or not, in that film, Two-Face was supposed to get his origin story in Batman Returns, but those got scrapped in the scripts. I think I probably already mentioned that in the last video, I think. As a result, with a new creative team on the helm, how did this film turn out? Well, let's hop into the cast. Now, first, let's talk about the new Batman, who was played by Val Kilmer. Now, I'll be actually blunt here. I actually didn't mind this take. Obviously, his version of Batman was similar to Michael Keaton in a way, being more stoic. But his Bruce Wayne was very different compared to the Michael Keaton one. He has a more businessman, entrepreneur, almost a charming celebrity type. I actually don't mind this take. I think he's very underrated as a Batman, personally. Again, he's not great as Michael Keaton, and probably not as great as the Christopher Nolan Batman or the Matt Reeves Batman, with those directors taking their unique stance on the character with their actors. But, he's not bad. I actually quite like him. We also here have the new female lead, Dr. Chase Meridia, played by, of course, the always talented and stunning Nicole Kidman. I'll be honest, I actually really like this character. Well, first off, she is a psychiatrist. She kind of has the sort of Vicky Vale thing going from the first film, but also has the kind of Catwoman seductiveness in the second. It's a character that's created specifically for the film. This wasn't a female hero or character from the comics, which is ironic, because actually there was a lot they could have done. Hell, they could have had Linda Page, who was a character very from the early comics, like Vicky Vale's era when she was first introduced. I actually don't mind her. True, some of her seductive scenes can be a bit eye-rolling sometimes, as they would do that, but I find her to be very strong, independent, and what I really like, even though she's attracted to, both men, due to both men, she preferred Bruce. She chose Bruce over Bats, which is the first time, very few times, at least from my experience from watching superhero films, where the girl chooses the man over the mask. I don't know, I actually find that interesting. This film also gave us Robin, portrayed by Chris O'Donnell. I actually liked him here. True, he's this young, angsty teen, but then again, what he went through. But I also like he's kind of going on a journey to try and find himself in a way. As he finds, his calling, as it was, to be this sort of crime fighter. He likes to fight alongside Batman. And I do like they touch on this kind of relationship a bit. I might explain it a bit more in the film, hopefully. But I really like it. I personally felt he just got not so good in the next one, but here he's all right. And I also like how he's on this journey. Honestly, what Batman was obviously wanting revenge for the death of his parents. Also, should we know this is the first time they introduced the original Robin's origin story, and I think it's actually done pretty great. Also, this film obviously gave us two villains, obviously. I mean, I said that before, but they're played by different characters. Two-Face this time is played by Tommy Lee Jones. Of course, an accomplished actor. We all know him from so much things. But it should be noted, this was never the case. It was originally planned for Billy D. Williams to play the role, but he got recasted with Tommy Lee Jones. Now, this version of the character is kind of mixed in the fandom. First off, it's the first time Two-Face is in live action. Compared to all the other villains like Riddler and even the predecessors Joker, Penguin, and Catwoman, all three of these villains, and Riddler, 4 I should say, were all on the classic Adam West show. So fans were kind of familiar with these 4. Two-Face was different because he never appeared. I kind of explained a bit more in those videos, like why he never appeared, and of course he kind of did in the Batman vs. Two-Face animated film where he was voiced by William Shatner. Anyway, like I said, this version is mixed because of how the character is acted throughout the film. I'll explain a bit more, but I'll be honest, I have a soft spot because this was my introduction to the character. It's because of this I found out about Two-Face, and as I got older, I began to know a bit more about the true character. And again, for a period, I think I hated this version, but now that I go back, I realize I don't. I actually like this version because it introduced me to the version I've become accustomed and associated with. So I can't really say it is a bad Two-Face. I mean, it is, but I guess I have a soft spot for it, so I can't really say I fully hate it. Of course, arguably the true main villain of the film, at least in the second midway through the film, is the Riddler, portrayed by Jim Carrey. This was my introduction to Jim Carrey, and I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan. I love The Mask, Ace Ventura, and again, you could list a whole bunch of credits to his name. This version might anger some fans because this was not the modern, what you expect for your traditional Riddler, but you gotta understand, that version really came in the 90s and was very new and very new. So that version really didn't come till later. This version was more of an homage to what the character was on the old Adam West show, again, famously portrayed by Frank Gorshin for most of that series run. Ultimately, he was kind of bringing that take back, but ultimately, I still think there's some elements of the Riddler from the classic comics does come here. Again, this one's more of a Looney Tune, and you can't really deny that Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones are, just hammering it up and having a blast. And for me, when actors are having a blast, some of that rubs off on the audience, and you enjoy it too. Of course, we have some, old guards, old favorites coming back, like Michael Goff back as Alfred. I like how Alfred is in this film, more than most, really helps kind of trying to console Dick. Which kind of gives the impression to me that this is what he was trying to go through with Bruce, but obviously I think he never, turned out the way he really wanted to. So I kind of like that. And of course, Gordon's back. This will be where Gordon really starts to go, honestly, to be more of a bumbler, if that's the word. He's slowly becoming more like Chief O'Hara, but I think it really happens arguably really in the last film where he really is becoming like Chief O'Hara again. Of course, Gordon here, still portrayed by Pat Hingle, a great actor, I'm sure, but I think the writing was kind of starting to fail him. Surprisingly not, Two-Face has 2 henchwomen, or girlfriends, or whatever you want to call them. Spice and Sugar. Sugar is portrayed by Drew Barrymore, who, again, is a well-known actress. I happen to know her really from childhood memories in the first 2 Charlie's Angels films. And, of course, Spice, portrayed by actress Debbie Mazur. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And ultimately, they are not so much eye candy. I mean, they are eye candy, but I do like how they come off as these really represent Two-Face's well split psyche personality, if that's um, anything to go by. And we have a small character here named Fred Stickley, or better known as Fred, really, for most of the film, where he's played by Ed Begley Jr. and basically plays a role in the Riddler's origin story. With the cast basically out of the way, let's get into the plot. We begin this film with a different type of opening credits than what we used to compared to the Tim Burton ones. Honestly, compared to that, it's not as flashy, but I actually don't mind it. The score's a bit different this time around, and again, I would prefer the Danny Elfman, but I actually don't mind it. It builds, and then eventually we go to the Batcave, Batman suiting on the costume. He comes out of his chambers, and the music builds, or we see the Batmobile come out. Now, the Batmobile is a completely different design compared to the first two, and arguably looks like a toy. But I like it. I mean, compared to the one that comes next, this one's definitely far better. And there was a reason to why it looked what it did, because they took a cue from, like, an actual bat's wing. Like, when you shine a light through it, you could see, like, exposed bones a bit, from what I remember from the behind-the-scenes stuff from an old documentary I have huge nostalgia for. And, of course, we have a look at the bat suit. We get a funny line where Alfred says, "Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you?" And he just goes, "I'll get drive-through," and goes in. Now, I want to talk about the Batsuit. I don't mind the design of the Batsuit. At least the first one he wears in the film. It's very similar to the first one that Michael Keaton wore, but I definitely see the Greek architect or Olympian influence that Tim Burton obviously did. I don't mind the design, except for one thing, and many people have always criticized this in the Tim Burton and the Joel Schumacher films, and that's the nipples. If they just got rid of that, I don't think we would have had much of a problem. But I really like the suit. Don't mind the Batmobile. Again, but already can get from the get-go that they want to bring a little bit of a different creativity. Whether it works, it's purely up to a person's interpretation or personal opinion. Anyway, he gets in the Batmobile and drives off. We then head to, I'm assuming somewhere in Gotham, probably downtown, which is what I always like to say, downtown. And basically, there is a police, people surrounding the building and the public behind, the usual don't enter signs. And basically, there's a hostage situation at what we find out is the Second Bank of Gotham. And here we see Two-Face flipping his coin. I like it, that's the first thing we get to introduce to, just the coin, just a hand flipping a coin. If you're going to introduce Two-Face, that's always been, for me, the greatest imagery to introduce him. And of course, for the most part, for the opening, we only see the good side, the Harvey Dent persona. And the dialogue is really great. You could really tell that this is a guy that's really in control. And the opening dialogue is really great. And then we get a close-up to Two-Face's face, and kind of the performance goes from what you would expect the character to be to a complete wild man Looney Tune. The design of the character is definitely, I think, suits the film's tone and aesthetic. People are not really a huge fan of the bright purple burnt side that we get, but I don't mind it. I mean, they do show cues on the thing turning like veins to be even a dark shade of purple. The other side of his clothing has a more fur type. Again, I don't mind the design. I feel it personally fits the tone of the film and the style of the film. And this is something we just got to point out with Two-Face. He basically becomes this always cackling, laughing maniacally, flipping a coin. You can really tell the evil persona is more in charge here. Well, if there is evil persona. We'll find out later in an origin throughout in the film where we get a flashback or a news report where basically it's revealed that Harvey Dent, they kind of skip his origin really, but we kind of get through saying that his origin is he used to be Gotham District Attorney, and he was in an attempt to prosecute notorious mob boss Sal Maroni in court. Batman tried to save him when this mobster was going through acid in half his face, and ultimately it scarred him. It also should be noted in the film, the acid got further into his brain, warping his brain chemistry, and as a result he acts like this because he does. Now, as much as this interpretation riles fans, because people criticize it as being a poor Joker, in fact that's kind of the same with Riddler's, but often being characterized, there are still elements of the character that's still there. The two-tone suit, the constant flipping of the coin, the fact he tends to refer to himself as we a lot, which actually fits Two-Face. That's who he's always referred to himself, because he's not just one person, he's two. And also his obsession with two. This is the fact he's robbing the second Bank of Gotham on the 2nd anniversary of the day he was captured. He just recently escaped. And also interesting, I find Two-Face's entire motivation throughout this film is to kill Batman. That's actually quite interesting. Most villains are all just some kind of payday or an ambiguous plot. He just wants Batman dead because he blames Batman for his scarring. That's actually not a bad villain, plot, and basically that's all he wants, and he's setting up a big trap. I don't mind the opening. It introduces the character and also introduces what kind of a threat he is. And throughout the film, he has this large army of resources behind him. This is a villain you definitely know. He's a legit supervillain who has the resources, and his whole motivation is to take Batman down. That's actually not bad. We then go back to outside the bank where Batman arrives, where he's, re-meets Commissioner Gordon and Dr. Chase Meridia, who is intrigued by Batman, and she's also revealed to be a psychiatrist, a doctor, who obviously studies the mental mind, and has been brought on this case to help, obviously, consult with taking down Two-Face, but she's more interested in Batman, and is a little bit attracted to him. Anyway, Batman, we get this kind of banter, well, not so much banter, but this dialogue between the two, where, you can tell that Batman's really not interested in her at all, but she's definitely, developed an interest in him. Anyway, Batman then leaves to go and do his thing. We go back to the bank, where I love the scene where Two-Face says, let's start the party with a bang, and just behind him, a wrecking ball comes behind him. I don't know, I just always love that scene. They notice that the elevator's coming up, and Two-Face immediately puts his plan into action, ordering the boys to go to the elevator and basically, as soon as it gets to the top, blast it with machine gun fire. I like the design of the thugs too. Mostly they wear black, but some wear long sleeve leather jackets and some wear leather vests showing their muscles. But I also like the masks they're wearing with like the two colors. One side's black, one side's red. I actually find these thugs like costumes actually easily reflect their boss better. And I don't really know how he managed to recruit them. Were they a former biker gang? But I really like the design of the thugs. I just want to point that out. Anyway, as soon as the elevator gets to the top, Two-Face orders his men to blast it. And eventually, once the elevator doors open, it's revealed that Batman's not there, only for him to jump from on top of the elevator roof and knock out most of the guys. Two-Face makes a run for it while the goons fight him off. I actually really like this fight scene. It's nicely edited. The music heightens, the excitement for me. And I also like how, Batman's using some gadgets to help with the situation. Some involve a batarang that ties ropes around one guy's leg, and one surprisingly just shocks a guy. This reminds me of the electric shock gun that Batman used in the Arkham game, specifically Arkham City and, of course, Arkham Knight. Anyway, after he's defeated all the goons, he then chases after Two-Face, only to notice a safe vault with the guard tied up. He goes in to rescue him, only for the guard to tell him it's a trap. The door shuts on him, and he notices the safe is beginning to move. The safe is literally pulled out of the bank and it's chained to a helicopter where Two-Face is. And basically, he plans to, and basically reveals that the safe is basically going to fill itself with acid, killing Batman and the guard inside, and then will open and basically acid will fall all over the city. Batman tries to get him and the guard out, and of course he does, ironically with the guard's hearing aid, showing that this film is willing to be a little bit silly. He gets not only him and the guard out, but he uses some of his gadgets to fire a cord back into the bank and attach it to a part chain that's holding the safe. He then uses a torch to cut a line in that chain, and the safe manages to make its way back into the bank with the guard, as he told the guard to hang on tight, and basically Batman still hangs on to that chain. Gordon and his men finally get to inside and rescue the guard, and Chase is with them, just enamored at what she's just seen. Anyway, Two-Face is unhappy, and the helicopter just goes flying around with Batman still hold to the chain. Two-Face gets control of his helicopter and goes straight into a billboard sign, well, an electric billboard, whatever I presume you call it, and just as they get through the other end, because it was basically a helicopter went through fire, Two-Face then looks out and thinks he's killed Batman, only to find out Batman is still on the helicopter, and Two-Face just starts blasting his gun, accidentally killing the pilot. Two-Face then goes to try to essentially shake Batman off, but sees he's disappeared, only to burst through the side of the glass on the side of the helicopter and basically telling him to give himself up. I do like for most of the film, Batman mostly refers to Two-Face as Harvey, at least in certain scenes. I don't know, it kind of gives the impression that, there is a history between the two, though very subtle. Two-Face manages to kick Batman, but Batman manages to hold on to the side of the helicopter. He then gets a stick. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like those things that you use to hold a steering wheel, and basically makes his run to the back. Batman gets in, and Two-Face jumps out of the helicopter and brandishing a parachute. He says a one-liner. Two-Face tends to do that a lot in this film, and basically parachutes away. But the helicopter is making its way over to what is essentially a Lady of Liberty statue. That thing in New York? Obviously Gotham needs to have one. Batman just barely manages to get out, and like this nice shot of him slowly submerging in the water, and you can really tell Batman really hit a close call. Eventually we get through a news report that Batman has thwarted whatever assassination attempt, but Two-Face is still at large and extremely dangerous. We then go to Wayne Enterprises. I think the first time in the film series we've actually get to go to where, Bruce is a, millionaire from his company thing. The first time we really get to do so. And here we get to see the Bruce side. And again, judging by his interaction, he has this persona of being this, charming, charismatic, almost businessman, and almost entrepreneur. But also in this moment we get introduced to Riddler, again played by Jim Carrey. The Riddler here is basically a Bruce Wayne obsessed fan and idolizes him. Eventually, and it's also here we get introduced to Fred, who is a high-ranking employee at Wayne Enterprises, and you can clearly tell that Bruce and him have very much a history. Eventually, of course, Bruce does meet Ed, and Fred is trying his best to have Ed not meet him. Ed here is portrayed as not only a scientist, which honestly does fit Ed well, because I could buy him as both a scientist and an inventor type, because he is supposed to be a genius. And he's shown to be a huge fan and wants to show off his latest project to Wayne. Fred is against it, but Bruce, being kind, lets him show it. Eventually, so he shows what it is. It's a device that it will have people interact within their favorite TV shows. But Bruce is against it because it'll be manipulating brainwaves. He's taken aback by it. And I do like how Ed is the stuttering nerd. Jim Carrey does this well, and surprisingly some of his comedy is dropped a bit to be a little bit more darker, or like the guy is an outcast nerd. I actually never minded this with Riddler. For me, if you want to have an outcast nerd that's a little bit goofy and silly, only two villains in the Rogues Gallery could pull this off. Riddler and the Mad Hatter. Now, speaking of the Mad Hatter, we got to get something out of the way. Riddler's unique gimmick here is manipulating brainwaves. Now, the problem here, this kind of comes under mind control, and that's Mad Hatter's territory, not Riddler's. In fact, him working at Wayne Enterprises, the Mad Hatter did that in Batman the Animated Series, which was actually an episode that I think would have been around this time, or a little bit maybe a year before this film came out. So there is a bit of, you could have just used the Mad Hatter. But anyway, Bruce turns him down and says it will raise too many questions, and basically doesn't agree to his project. This turns Edward's world on its head. The guy he idolized, who should have understood him, doesn't. And this leads him on the path to becoming a villain. Now, I buy this Not only because this is a guy that's clearly deranged, but he and Bruce as not only equals, but as friends in his imaginary world. This completely crushes his soul. And basically leads him on the path to villainy, especially when he says this line, "I'll make you understand." The reason Bruce, of course, has to quickly leave because he notices the bat signal, and of course, when he goes to his office, there is a tunnel underneath his chair that takes him into the Batcave. He gets dressed up as usual, drives off all the way to the Gotham Police Department, to the bat signal. However, he notices that Gordon's not there. It's Chase Meridia. Now, she claims to have called him because she noticed something about Two-Face, his coin. It's his Achilles heel, and it can be exploited. But Batman knows this. Obviously because he's put Two-Face away. And basically, it's Chase is trying to understand a bit more about him and seduce him, but Batman's not going for it. We get a line here, however, that references Batman Returns with Catwoman. Again, these films are meant to be in chronological order of the first two Tim Burton films, and that is kind of the consensus. However, I always viewed Batman Returns and Batman and Robin as Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, as their own separate timeline, their own separate universe that have no connection to the Tim Burton films. They're their own thing. At least that's how I've always viewed it. But, they were kind of meant to be a continuation. The reason why I always consider them separate because of two distinctive tones. But anyway, the scene then would end with does kind of end with Gordon running in his pajamas, a robe, and his hat, saying the signal's up, what's wrong? Batman says nothing. It was just nothing, and dives off the roof back into his Batmobile. He then says, "Women," drives off. Now this scene arguably could have been condensed, or maybe shortened. This is a scene I'm not a huge fan of. You can really tell it's trying to be seductive, but it always felt a little bit forced and unnecessary to me. Anyway, but we go back to Edward's lab, where he's still continuing on his project, where he's caught by Fred, and is calling security, only for Ed to knock him out, tie him up, and have him be the test guinea pig for the experiment, and basically turns on the TV and experiences his thing. Now, what I absolutely love about this scene is it's Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. He's off his, I'm sure, rocker, and just having an absolute blast of a time, having a field day. And he makes this scene work, and this was one of the reasons I absolutely loved this version of the Riddler, because Jim Carrey's performance. He's going crazy, over the top, it's just wild. He then turns the machine off. He then reveals something that he just noticed. While he was mesmerized by the 3D TV and the invention that he had, it has somehow managed to make his brain smarter and heighten his intelligence, further obviously pushing him further into insanity. Now, this is something I like with Riddler. Riddler was always meant to be Batman's most smartest and intellectual villain, so for me this scene makes sense. Fred is obviously threatening, legal action, but first wants to fire him. But Riddler doesn't give him that opportunity, as at first he pushes him out a window, but the cord somehow prevents him. Riddler, you think Ed is about to save him, but basically reveals that no, in fact, he's the one fired, or he should say terminated. He then removes the cord, and ultimately Fred falls to his death into the river. Edward then walks away, further going off the rails, and basically goes to fix the TV, the security camera, and obviously plans to alter what has just been shown, because it caught everything. Anyway, we get back to Bruce's place, where he's obviously watching the news, and it's basically recapping Two-Face's origin story. I just explained that. Alfred gets a call saying there's been an accident at Wayne Enterprises. They go there, and it's this basically revealing Fred's death, but Ed has managed to cover it up through to a doctored footage, but also making it look like basically a suicide. But however, Batman kind of can't buy it, as, he knows he would never do something like that, and he's ordering that, the benefits go to Fred's parents. Even though it's against policy, he still demands that it happens anyway, showing that Bruce does have a heart and, is not, has a heart and would never do something like this. But however, he does stumble across something, a riddle, something that would happen throughout the film. Riddles will be sent to Bruce, not Batman. But the first riddle, and this is why I like the Riddler, because I actually used to like these riddles. This introduced me to riddles, and I became quite obsessed with them as a kid. You can ask my parents for a while, like, I love these riddles. But basically, the first riddle's answer is a clock. And basically, Bruce knows he has a stalker. This next scene is actually Ed going back to his apartment. And I love this. The apartment is small, confined, and cramped. It actually gives you a clear insight to the character's mental state. And also there's like these dolls and pictures of this, essentially what looks like the classic Riddler from the comics, clearly having a bit of an influence on the character and obviously who he would become later in the film. Anyway, he's setting up another riddle where he goes to Wayne Manor's gates and leaves one and drives off. Bruce then, the next scene is Bruce going to the Gotham City Police Department, where he goes and, see Chase Meridia about, these riddles that he's being left with. The second riddle he was given, by the way, answer was a match. Now, how Bruce interacts with Nicole Kidman's Chase Meridia, actually, I like it. I buy there's some decent chemistry there. And you can really tell in the Bruce Wayne persona, he is genuinely attracted to her. I guess it's because, I don't know. And even, Chase finds an interest in him too. Especially when when Bruce sees a Rorschach and says he's interested in bats, and she said, "Nah, that's a Rorschach. Obviously, he must have an interest in bats." And I like how she's trying to, psyche into his into Bruce's psyche, clearly showing that she can't turn this off. When a character, and I kind of like this because she needs to dissect everything. Bruce then goes to this doll, which basically symbolizes, dreams with the good and the bad side, something that will become prevalent throughout the film, quite at least in a few more scenes. And I like how Bruce just ends the conversation before, the time's up, cut it off. But then basically he asks to take her, to the circus. In an earlier scene, Bruce says he's, an assistant of Bruce says he has to go to circus, but he needs a date, but hasn't found one yet, and so decides to take Chase Meridia. We then go to the circus scene, and I actually love this set. It's big, it's grand. I'm also surprised why Gotham would have a circus, considering what happened in Batman Returns, if these films are still meant to be chronological, but again, I've always viewed them as the Joel Schumacher films separate to the Tim Burton films, but if I kept doing that, I'll be repeating myself throughout the whole review. Anyway, it's also here we get introduced to the Flying Graysons. Here, where Dick Grayson is portrayed by Chris O'Donnell. Interesting fact, in this film, Dick Grayson's given a brother. That's never happened in the comics. It was just parents. So, essentially, Dick is the youngest. He has his parents and a brother who are all trapeze artists. This is classic comics. Also, the costumes they're wearing feel like a nice throwback to the original Robin costume. Obviously, without the, at least kind of similar to what Burt Ward wore in the 60s show, but also what the classic Robin costume was in the 90s at the time, the Tim Drake Robin costume at the time. Anyway, they're on the trapeze. Bruce and Chase are chatting it up and are enjoying themselves. Also, this is being filmed live, and we see Ed watching in disgust when Bruce turns up. But anyway, eventually they do this this trick where they do the death drop without the safety of a net. The net is taken away. This would ironically lead something very terrible throughout the film. But anyway, also the ringmaster is secretly captured. At the end of the act, the circus has been hijacked by Two-Face and his gang. And Two-Face is wearing a two-toned colored patterned suit in the same vein, but also dressed up as a ringmaster. So Two-Face will kind of switch costumes every now and again. And basically, he takes the whole circus hostage, and Edward is watching. Ultimately, Two-Face will play a role in Edward's creation of the Riddler, because he's enamored and, taken in by the madness that he's seeing. I actually kind of like this. Anyway, but basically, he's hijacked the event, and basically brings out a bomb, which is filled with 200 sticks of TNT, and basically, he's threatening to blow up the circus unless Batman reveals himself. He manages to deduce that one of you people, influential people, know who Batman is, how one of you is Batman, and they have 2 minutes to come forward. And I like how Bruce's immediate reaction was to say, Two-Face, I am Batman, because the crowd is shouting so loudly no one can hear. So he has to secretly, run off to go and stop the event, and Chase wondering where he's going. The bomb is further going up to the top of the tent. However, Dick and his family realize they can stop it. The boys are ordered to go, further topside, while the rest, go by the wires to try and get the bomb. I like how that's their first reaction. They want to stop this before this gets out of hand. And we see, Dick take on a few goons. Hell, even Bruce takes on a few goons. Now, this is something that griped me. As much as I don't mind Bruce this, he should have, when he got the opportunity, took one of the goons' mask and puts it on to hide his identity. Because if Bruce is doing all this, they will start asking questions. But anyway, I like the scene that's happening. The music is actually really heightening, and Bruce, is doing his best to stop it from getting out of control. He takes on a few more goons. Eventually, Dick gets his hands on the bomb and takes it to the top and throws it in and manages to roll it into the river before the place, the tent can explode. But something happens. Two-Face flips his coin and it comes up bad side. He then gets a machine gun from one of his goons that have been recently knocked out and begins firing at the poles as he's noticing that these trapeze artists are trying to take down the bomb. Again, this kind of happened a little bit before Dick managed to get rid of it. But basically, it shoots down the wiring and the Graysons fall to their deaths. And Bruce watches this, and this will begin his traumatic event. This triggers something that he will have to deal with throughout the film. I like how everyone is mourning, but you get this shot up in the sky where it's dark, but you see someone poking out, and it looks like a very young boy. I'm pretty sure this was meant to be a kind of nod to Dick, when he was obviously a younger boy. And I like how Bruce is instantly mourning with Dick, because he knows what it's like firsthand to witness his parents gunned down in front of him. And Dick is heartbroken. Chris O'Donnell buys this, sells this for me. You can't, he doesn't know how to react. As much as he saved the day, his parents, and and we just zoom in to dead bodies there. Now, we don't actually get to see them die. It's only hinted through music they fall to their deaths, which can be very much more impactful and very more emotional and more effective than showing it. And it's a really sad scene, and it ultimately begins Dick Grayson's origin story. Anyway, the next day, Gordon takes Dick to Bruce's place, basically saying how he's got no one and he has to look after him. Now, to be fair, Dick does not look like a teenager. He doesn't look like a kid. Honestly, he looks like a early 20s, very early 20s, or I would say, very early 20s at least. At least that's the furthest I can spend my disbelief to. But basically, he's handed over to Bruce to look after him because he can't stay with them all day. He hasn't slept, hasn't eaten, he needs help. So he hands him off to Bruce. I'd imagine Bruce gladly helped, obviously because he knows what the kid's going through. Anyway, Dick does get acquainted to Alfred and, does like him because he tends to call him Al a lot. But, Dick quickly wants to bail and chase Two-Face. He wants to gun Two-Face and kill him. Bruce says that won't make the pain go away, it will just make it worse. But he does manage to convince Dick to stay after showing his motorbike collection, and Dick is enamored by and decides to obviously stay. Now, Dick is a bit snappy, a bit grungy, but honestly, what he's just witnessed, can you blame him? He's just witnessed his parents die in front of him, and he's clearly not handling it well. So when people tend to put that argument, I never thought it was a bad thing. It's just because he's went through a very traumatic event. How would you react in that situation? But of course, this is affecting Bruce as he's now having relapses or memories of his parents getting gunned down, along with certain imagery that he's clearly been suppressing. He does say he killed them when Alfred comes in and he's like, what? He killed them. Two-Face slaughtered that boy's parents. But he says, no, you said I killed them. Anyway, Bruce, before he could continue the conversation, he knows the bat signal and he quickly, runs off, to go and be Batman, obviously, and he asks Alfred to take care of the kid. And he said, I'll do so. Dick is getting, acquainted into the room, staying, and he notices something on Dick's helmet. a robin, a bird, a robin. And the origin of that is because one time when they were performing, his brother fell off a wire and Dick rescued him. And he said he flew in like a robin. And I like the meaning behind that. It's something that his parents, gave him when he was a kid. And it was just a family thing, which for me makes sense. If he's going to have the name Robin, it needs to have a symbolic meaning and not something just random. But basically saying but Alfred does give him some encouraging words, how broken wings mend in time, and one day Robin will fly again. Dick kind of feels like he was a failure. True, he saved the circus, but at the cost of his family. And again, this will begin a bit of a character journey. Anyway, Batman's in the Batmobile trying to track down some criminals, I'm guessing. But he soon eventually gets into an ambush by Two-Face and his crew. Basically it's this chase scene. I really like it, and I really like the style of the cars. It has a sort of 40s style to the cars, and even armored truck as Two-Face's go-to car. And basically, I like how every time Two-Face has a trap, it either has something to do with twos or it's two traps in one. Think about it, at the bank, at the circus, and here. But eventually Batman manages to get away, and Two-Face is just more angry than ever. We cut back to Edward because he's wondering what he's doing. He's starting to create himself his alter ego. And he comes up with names such as the Gamester, Captain Kill, and surprisingly the Puzzler. If you recall, that was a villain used in the old 60s show. Eventually goes, what? Question mark, man. He clearly shows he's trying to define himself, a new identity. But noticing the imagery around him with this old fortune teller thing, he then, takes on the persona of what he sees around him. We then go to Two-Face's place where he's angry that, Batman escaped, and he's there with his henchwomen, Sugar and Spice. Honestly, I like these two, obviously because it reflects Two-Face's personality, but of course Two-Face would have two girlfriends due to his, obsession with twos. Only for the Riddler to suddenly appear, and basically, I love how these two are acquainted. Two-Face obviously is angry that this guy's found his place, and basically Riddler offers a partnership, showing how he's found him by using his brain machine, or brain drain. And eventually he then proposes that the two team up. Two-Face will help him on a crime spree so he can have enough production capital to, start his company and sell these around Gotham. In exchange, he will help him deal with Batman, find out his identity. Two-Face is intrigued with the proposal, but he's still angry how he's found his lair. However, it's not up to him, and he gets out his coin. Heads, he'll accept, and tails, he'll blow his damn head off. So then they flip the coin, and obviously it lands on heads even though we don't see it, and Two-Face and Riddler begin a crime spree. And I love how Two-Face and Riddler just play off each other. These are two just wild cards. Again, not something I would like with the more traditional version of these characters, but for this film, for this setting, it works. And eventually, Riddler becomes I wouldn't say becomes a notorious criminal, and Bruce once again gets another riddle, and the answer is chess match. He doesn't know what's the connection there, and he finds out that the person who's sending these to him is, of course, the Riddler. Dick is trying to make his way into a door that is locked, and it's clearly the entrance to the Batcave. Alfred tries to sway him, there's nothing important, but Dick, is suspicious. I also like how Alfred, does help Bruce with these riddles, and, does help him a lot. Something that kind of I liked in Batman Returns and is passed over to here. Anyway, Edward then holds a massive press conference where he's revealing his Nigmatech box to the public. And basically, Nigmatech is a huge company, the box is his prized brand, and of course what it does is suck the brainwaves out of, the people out of Gotham and into Edward and Two-Face, and it's implying, how they are getting high on this thing. But basically, I kind of like the music has this kind of dark twistedness when he's sucking it into his head. It's certainly feeling his ego and his crazy mental state. I kind of like it. Anyway, Alfred goes back into the Batcave secret entrance, and Dick makes his way in a very over-the-top way. But basically, he discovers the Batcave, and Alfred gives him that face, and Dick, just does this little wave and that type of face. And Bruce, well, he's on a date with Chase. Chase is there because he's enamored with Bruce, but you know, she's also trying to help him break through the cycle, you know, these repressed memories that are making their way back. It also finds out that, you know, that she's also interested in Batman. Bruce stumbles upon some research, and she's fascinated to why he's doing this and what, you know, clearly mental state is he's suffering from. But the date is interrupted when Bruce gets a call on his watch from Alfred that Dick has stolen the car. Bruce thinks what? It's one of the Bentley or the Jag, but he says no, the other car. And basically Dick is being this reckless teen going all over Gotham driving the car, but he stumbles upon, you know, a bunch of thugs harassing a girl. He then chases them into an alleyway and fights them off, saving her, and he actually likes this. He likes fighting off, helping people. And just when things are about to get worse as more thugs are coming, Batman suddenly appears and causes them to disperse. Dick then turns to fight Batman, taking his frustration out, saying if he was only there, his parents would still be alive. But Bruce says if he would give his life for his family, he would. We then go back to the Batcave, and this is where the scene feels dark, as Dick, you know, says, you know, he's mad at Two-Face, but when he's out in the street taking them on, he felt not only good, but that pain went away. Do you know how that feels? And he says, yes, I do. And says, good, because you are going to help me find Two-Face, and when we do, I'm going to kill him. And Bruce always says, do you really want to? And he says, like, want to? Do you really want to take a life? Dick says yes. And I love how Bruce says this monologue. This has always stuck out to me. But it also gives Bruce's psyche, saying, okay, say we do find him, and you make the kill. But the pain, it doesn't go away, it only grows. So next thing you know, you're going out to fight another face, another, and another, and another, until one morning you wake up and realize revenge has become your whole life, and you don't know why. What I love about this, you can clearly tell he's talking from experience. In these 4 films, Batman is killed. Again, I don't normally like that, but I won't mind if it's in a certain context. And I do like this line as implied. No, he's done this, and the revenge has really affected him. He's obviously trying to talk Dick out of it. Dick wants to be his partner. He wants to, you know, help. But Bruce doesn't want him on board. Obviously not wanting to go down the same road he did, as he knows firsthand what it's like. But Dick says, I'm a part of this now, whether you like it or not. And I like how Alfred just gives that look. You can clearly tell Alfred, an interesting role Alfred's going to play is kind of be a mentor to Dick, as he's going through the same thing Bruce is. Bruce is trying to make sure he doesn't go down that path, but I think Alfred knows sometimes people just randomly find yourself on this path and you have to go down. It's just who helps you along the way to get to the proper destination and not at the wrong one. So I kind of get that impression here. Anyway, we go to a Gotham Gallery event hosted by Edward Nygma. And, you know, it's a gallus event. I like how Ed loves the attention. But as soon as Bruce turns up, he's angry it's turned to him. You also tell he's such a Uber fan, he's dressing like Bruce. Chase is there as his date. Dick is tagging along, because he obviously has to. Now, as much as people don't like this Riddler, I don't mind. This one bit is accurate. Riddler loves the attention. He loves the limelight. He wants to be noticed. That is Riddler, and of course, to show off his genius. And he does when he shows off the Enigma Tech box, how, you know, it now is no longer putting you in the TV, but it now can make you live out a fantasy. And I really like this. And eventually, you know, Riddler goes to dance off with Chase, and how the hell Chase is keeping a straight face with what Enigma's doing, you know, what Jim Carrey's doing, is a mystery to me. I heard in the commentary, she nearly broke character, and I don't blame her. Anyway, Bruce makes his way into the Enigma box, where it's suddenly turned on, and basically began scanning Edward's brain. By the way, Riddler's date is Sugar, who it's clearly out of the Two-Face henchwoman. You know, it's clear that, you know, Sugar has developed a little bit of an attraction towards Riddler. But suddenly Two-Face appears, and this was not scripted. As Two-Face is sick of waiting for Batman, this would be kind of Two-Face's thing. He really wants Batman dead. He doesn't want the theatrics, he just wants him dead, and he suddenly crashes the party. Riddler doesn't like this. Also, Spice is with Two-Face in this, you know, as the henchwoman, and all the guys crash. Bruce is suddenly, you know, clocked out of his trance, whatever it is, walks out and sees the event happening, and he quickly runs out the back and gets changed. Dick sees that, and he also runs. And I do like how, Batman then makes his way in through the ceiling and fights off the goons. Dick makes his way to Alfred and asks for his suit. Alfred, obviously going along with this, bringing his suit, but he's saying he could be fired for this. Hopefully they'll have him back at Buckingham Palace. I actually got a genuine laugh out of that. As Batman's dealt with the goons, Two-Face says it's time for Phase 2 and they begin to run off. Batman sees Chase and she says, "My place, midnight." Also, she gives him a kiss. Batman chases Two-Face and manages to go to a construction site, but it turns out it's a trap. He's put in this, I don't know, like a corner of, basically what happens, Batman's jumped through this construction site at the top, but it's a trap, and he's in this kind of cave-ish room, I'm not really sure what you call it, and basically they blast fire, and also this large gun Two-Face has, and basically Two-Face and his crew believe they've burnt Batman alive and are celebrating his death, only to suddenly see Batman run out of the flames. Batman managed to survive by using his cape, which somehow turns into a shield. I love the scene, however, Batman just running out of the fire and the music behind really engulfs it, and Two-Face says the line I'm sure every villain has said every time they've gone up against him: "Why can't you just die?" He fires again, but it's causing so much destruction damage that the place begins to collapse on itself. Two-Face and his crew quickly manage to run out, and basically everything has piled on Batman, and you believe, there's no way he could get out of this one. Only to be saved by or Dick, I should say, because he's not Robin yet, drags him out of the rubble. Now, Dick is wearing his old acrobatic costume, only with the domino mask, and manages to save him. But Batman's not happy. Back at the Batcave, he rips him into a new one. But Dick says you got a real gratitude problem. What should I be called? Batboy? Nightwing? I love that little reference, because that's what Dick would later become. True, started out as Robin in the comics, but later evolved into Nightwing. I think I've explained that on Batman the Anime Series, but I love that little Easter egg. I didn't pick up on that until years later when I found out about Nightwing. Then when I rewatched this film, that line came again. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But you can tell Bruce doesn't want him in this. He says he's getting out of control. He's going to get someone killed. I like how as soon as Dick's getting involved in this, he's getting a little bit cocky. But I think it's because he's finding himself. But he says, "You're looking at your new partner. But where Batman goes, I'm going to be right beside you. How can you stop me?" And Bruce just has to stand up and says, "I can stop you." Dick again gets a little bit cocky and hands his acrobatic suit to Alfred and says, "Put this next to the bat suit where it belongs," and he walks off. Bruce then turns to Alfred and says, "You're encouraging this." And Alfred does have a point when he says, "For a mind for revenge, a person doesn't need encouragement, they need guidance. You, above all people, should know the consequences of the life you choose." Bruce then looks at the monitors and basically how he says a line how Chase said to him earlier when he was Bruce at that date that got interrupted. How he was saying how Batman's a curse. And you can tell Bruce has developed some genuine feelings towards her. And Alfred just goes, "Go to her, tell her how you feel." But he says, "She wants Batman, not Bruce Wayne." And he just goes, "Let the lady decide." So that night he goes to Chase's place, and basically Chase says, "I'm seeing someone else now, clearly more interested in Bruce than Batman," and he just goes away. He does this awkward smile and walks. Now, there is a little bit of a deleted scene I wish was kind of kept in. It was kind of around this time, and it was basically a news report implying Batman should retire. And Alfred is encouraging this, considering that the police force are being better funded. Why not retire? And I do like Batman's having obviously psychological issues with this, with these repressed memories, but also him struggling to be Batman. As much as I don't think the film quite executed as well, I do appreciate for them trying to, and do keeping it a bit in the focus. But anyway, Two-Face is upset that Batman has once again survived, but Riddler cheers him up by revealing what was in Bruce Wayne's head, revealing that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and Two-Face is thrilled about it. And obviously they plan their next move. And here we go back to the Batcave, where Bruce says Batman is no more and hangs it up. This can kind of come out of nowhere, but when you view how he's struggling with an identity crisis throughout the film, this makes sense. He finally hanging it up because someone's interested in him, Bruce, not Batman. That's a rarity. But Dick is against this, saying Batman has to protect the innocent. But Batman says this line that's arguably chilling, how he says he's protected, he's dedicated his life to protecting, taking down men he's never met, faces he's never seen, but the innocent aren't so faceless anymore. That's actually dark, but I'll buy a superhero saying that, if they come to this realization. He begins to hang it up. But Dick says every man goes his own way, minus the Two-Face. But then Bruce scolds him, saying, really? You kill him? What's next? And Dick does kind of sigh and says, exactly, you'll end up alone like me. And that's one of the saddest realities of Batman. Bruce being Batman, has left him alone. The only thing he's got is Alfred. This was obviously before the sidekicks really started coming in. But then, he's telling he's hanging it up, and he's going to explain this whole thing to Chase, and they'll talk more about it upstairs. There's a later scene where Dick steals his acrobatic Robin costume and leaves the Batcave with his motorbike. He basically runs away. Chase comes, introduces herself to Alfred, and basically her and Bruce have this date, and it's on Halloween. There's trick-or-treaters, and this is where Riddler and Two-Face begin to show up. The Bruce and Chase's date is going well until roses drop on the ground and repressed memories are flooding back. And what I like about the scene, as much as Bruce's death was, or parents' death, obviously the catalyst what he became, there's clearly was something more to that. More repressed memories are coming back, and he's revealing at the funeral when people were sad and the priest's words weren't really helping, he goes to his father's old journal, a red journal, picks it up, and runs and begins to run into the storm where he falls into a cavern. There, he sees a giant bat wing fly to him, and he says this monologue how this would inspire him to become this winged Avenger, and how he would have his revenge. Chase doesn't understand what he's saying. The two kiss, and she realizes Bruce is Batman through a kiss. I love that's the realization how she finds out, and they have this pause because they don't know what to say. But anyway, Alfred goes back to the door when he hears trick-or-treaters, but it's really Two-Face and Riddler wearing these kid-friendly masks. They burst in, knock Alfred out, and Riddler says Two-Face and his crew to get Bruce, but no killing. And basically, the scene then goes with Riddler breaking his way into the Batcave and causing massive destruction. Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey going off the rampage. And Two-Face and his crew go and try to kidnap Bruce and Chase. Bruce puts up a fight and, saves Chase. Chase actually gets in a few punches here and there and doesn't act as the damsel in distress. I kind of like this. And you see Two-Face just flipping a coin, but he's upset that it's coming up constantly on the good side. This is what gets fans who like Two-Face angry about. How, if it comes up heads, it's heads. You stop. You don't keep doing it. However, it should be noted there was a comic that where Two-Face, was constantly flipping to get the result he wanted. So I think they were adapting that. So I don't really blame the story writers. I just blame that. But anyway, Two-Face is constantly flipping, and he does get the side, that he wanted. I would have fixed this scene just having Two-Face just constantly flip. Not after a side, but that's what he's just doing, just waiting. But eventually he sees an opportunity to kill, so he decides to flip the coin to see if it would come up his way. And if it comes up tails, he will go that way. That's what I would have done to save this scene. Anyway, these are getting intertwined with Riddler causing mass destruction to the Batcave. He blows up the suits, the computers, everything, and the Batmobile. And there's really no stunt double here. This was Jim Carrey all on his own. Anyway, but it comes up bad side, and Two-Face shoots. It only grazes Bruce on the head, and the goons kidnap Chase. Two-Face is about to go and shoot, Bruce point blank range, only for Riddler to stop him and leave behind a riddle and saying, that don't kill him. Obviously, they've got bigger plans. So they all leave with Chase as a hostage. Bruce then wakes up and Alfred informs everything. Chase has been kidnapped, the Batcave's destroyed, Dick's run away, and now there's another riddle. We then go to, where Chase is being, chained up on a couch, and Riddler goes in this really interesting suit with this light-up jacket. It's a really great visual costume. And again, Riddler wears mostly a onesie throughout the film. Sometimes he'll wear this weird-looking jacket on top and a bowler hat and the cane. Again, I absolutely love that as a kid. I still do, even though I'm older. But that always stuck out to me. And basically, he's also turned the bat signal into a kind of question mark thing, taking control of Gotham, or basically just having Bruce to kind of know where he is. Anyway, they answer the riddle and it's vowels. They then begin to decipher the riddles. They notice that it had numbers in the riddles, but they managed to decipher three main letters with these numbers. And basically it's M-R-E. They basically know Mr. E means mystery, and another name for mystery is enigma. So Mr. Enigma, and Bruce pulls it together. Oh, realizes it means Edward Nygma, realizing that he's the Riddler and that the death of Fred was a computer-generated forgery. Fred didn't commit suicide, he was murdered, and Ed covered it up. They go back to the Batcave, where he goes to put on this prototype suit that he's never fully tested, and clearly was never fully completed. Also, there was a deleted scene where he was supposed to go into this room and confront that demon bat that we saw in that sort of vision. Unfortunately, the scene was cut, but I really wish it could have, as it would have, I think it would have added more to the film, but unfortunately, it just didn't happen. And he wears the costume. Now, I like how this costume doesn't have any bat nipples, but I'm not a fan of it being silver blue. But I'm not a huge fan of it, but yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, just as he goes to saying, what should I go by sea or by air? He hears a voice in the background and says, why not both? And here comes Dick, dressed up in a Robin costume. Really well done, but again, wish the nipples. And it's also revealed that Alfred helped pull it together. And he notices an R on the suit. And he says, what does that stand for? He just turns around and says, Robin. Clearly embracing the nickname. He says, Riddler and Two-Face are a pretty lethal combination. You clearly need an extra pair of hands. And 2 against 2 are better odds. Even though he says he can't promise he won't kill Harvey. Yeah, but Bruce says a man needs to go his own way. A friend told me that. Says not just a friend, puts out his hand, and Bruce just says a partner, and the two shake. And as a result, the dynamic duo are born. Now, people might not like the journey, but I personally don't mind it. I kind of felt like, Dick, he definitely obviously understands Bruce, and Bruce definitely realizes he needs the hand, but he also sees, judging by the new suit, he's clearly maybe taken some of his advice to heart. That's how I've always viewed it and never minded it. They then go flying and driving the Batboat into the Batcave. Batman takes the Batwing, and Robin takes the Batboat, and they head all the way to Nigma Tech, where obviously Riddler and Two-Face are holed up, but not before Batman destroys Riddler's question mark thing that has hijacked his bat signal, and of course Gordon is happy, to see Batman back. Again, he's acting more like Chief O'Hara here, but I blame more of the writing than the actor. As they're making their way, Riddler and Two-Face are essentially playing a live version of, battleships, with bombs going off everywhere, essentially resulting in the Batboat getting bombed, but Robin manages to get out in the nick of time, and as he's in the water, he is surrounded by frogmen, underdivers, who are clearly Riddler's henchmen, and Batman's Batwing is shot down into the water, and it turns into a bat sub. He rescues Robin, they make their way to the island. And I like how Jim Carrey does this, now the little game begins. I don't know why, but he manages to make that so full of energy, but also slightly terrifying. Again, even though this is bizarre, I like how at this, when they first meet, Riddler's really in charge, Two-Face is coming along, but you can clearly tell it is not a partnership that's really meant to last because of 2 conflicting personalities. Anyway, they make their way to the island, but they get separated, and they each have to take their own way to get further in. And here, Robin confronts Two-Face, and it's a brutal fight. I love the music. And what I like is how, just as he's punching, he says, that's for my mother, that's for my father, my brother, but this one's for me. And Two-Face is on the ledge. And you can clearly, and I like that last stand with Robin just standing there and the cape blowing. You can really tell, he's really taking his revenge, but he's also kicking ass. Batman makes his way inside, but is caught in a trap. Of course, he does manage to get out, like he always does. Anyway, we go back to Robin, just before we get to the real climax. Just as Two-Face is beginning to fall, Robin could easily let Two-Face fall and take his revenge, but he decides to save him, saying he'd rather have him in jail. Clearly telling that as much as he wanted revenge, a part of him couldn't go through with it. For me, Robin never had it in him for revenge. He was always more lighthearted than Bruce. True, he's starting on a dark path, but it was always better because, honestly, he was just always had it in him to be lighthearted, to be this heroic. Bruce was always dark, really in my mind, always there. But because, I don't know, maybe circumstances or biology, he just doesn't have it in him. So he saves Two-Face only to be double-crossed and held at gunpoint, and is basically captured. Batman manages to make his way out of the death trap and makes his way to the main overall where this gigantic set. And here Riddler is wearing this white suit and this new cane. Two-Face appears along with Spice and Sugar, and basically Batman's deduced that this brain tech has managed to help him read men's minds, not only make him smart, but now he has all this information and knowledge. This is a perfect scheme for Riddler. I just wish it was more in the focus forefront than obviously what happened. Anyway, but basically Riddler does his trap in this trap or really game show type, which honestly fits his personality, revealing both Robin and Chase as hostages, and threatens to, and basically Bruce has to pick which one to save, and the one that doesn't get saved will be dropped down to this dropped to a watery grave, and this will become later in the final act. Bruce refuses to choose. Nigma then decides to just drop them both, but before that he asks if he could give him a riddle, and Riddler is intrigued and allows Batman to, give the riddle. And basically, the answer to it, which Riddler knows, is you're blind as a bat. Batman says exactly, and throws the Batarang to this top bit of the building, where basically it's storing all these memory things with the Enigma tech, and causes a massive explosion. But it also is affecting Riddler's mental state, as it's now sucking all the information that he's drained. Two-Face and the henchwoman manage to run out when things are going out of control, but Riddler manages to press a button, resulting in Robin and Chase being dropped to their deaths. Batman dives in after them, trying to save them from falling to their deaths. He manages to save Chase, but as Batman's getting further to Robin, Robin tries to help by managing to untangle himself by holding his arms out, and Batman catches him, showing that Robin is capable of saving himself, is willing to adapt on the fly, showing that he's not useless. Anyway, with Robin and Chase saved, the two dynamic duo takes Chase to a certain ledge out of sight, but then Two-Face appears and plans to basically gun all three of them down. But Batman manages to get in Two-Face's head, says, "Aren't you forgetting something? Your coin. Your two minds about everything." And he secretly reveals a whole bunch of coins. Two-Face then agrees to this, and I like how he says this one line, "Thank you, Bruce, you've always been a good friend." This kind of gives implied that Harvey was friends with Bruce, and I think with Batman, but the acid just turned him into this crazed maniac. As he flips his coin, Batman throws a whole bunch of coins in the air. Two-Face drops his gun and tries to catch his coin, but ultimately leans forward and falls to his death. For me, the coin should always be Two-Face's undoing, because it's his obsession. His world revolves around it. And as he's falling, and basically implies that he fell to his death, you see this hand as it's slowly sinking into the water and catches a coin. This was something on Joel Schumacher's point to implicate that, he might have survived, but it's clear that he died. And again, Batman killed him, but I like as Robin sees him fall, he comes to peace with it. Glad he didn't take, Two-Face's life, and basically, brings that peace. I kind of like this Robin story here. It's not perfect, but I do like for the beats that it takes. Anyway, but they have to find out what happened to Riddler. So they go up and see what's become of Riddler. And as Riddler's mumbling, Batman says, basically, "Edward, I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Not because I have to be, it's because I choose to be." And basically terrifies Riddler with a shadow of a bat flying towards him. We then cut to Arkham Asylum. Yeah, this film introduces Arkham and will become a next thing that will be seen both in the next film. It will be seen in Batman Begins and the Batman in Matt Reeves' Batman. So I do like that. This is the first introduction to Arkham, and just the shot, with the gates and the castle in the back. This is Arkham stripped straight from the comics. So I love how they got that right. Anyway, Chase goes to see Edward, see how he's doing, as he's claimed he knows Batman's identity. But it's revealed that it's warped his mind, where he claims that he is Batman, showing just how twisted and deranged he's gotten. Chase then leaves and basically goes to Bruce, saying, how basically he's a wacko, like his secret is safe, he won't be revealing it anytime soon. Bruce then gives back Chase the doll that he was given both on their first date, but also in their first scene where Chase meets Bruce, and basically says he won't be needing it anymore, but thank you for giving me a new dream. The two kiss, with Alfred looking on happy, and Chase says, "Don't stay up too late." And then as we hear the rumblings of the theme of this specific film's Batman theme song. You see Batman and Robin running into the night with the bat signal behind. I like this ending showing that the dynamic duo are going to take on crime in the city. Now, there was an original shot with them, standing on a gargoyle, but I actually don't mind this. As honestly, for me, it just feels like a good ending to the film. It fits the tone, the style, and ultimately, it's a pretty decent, solid ending. Maybe not great as compared to the first two, but a decent ending nonetheless. And I really like how Bruce has come to terms with the two sides of his persona and essentially starting a new chapter as no longer fighting crime alone, but now with the sidekick of Robin. Essentially, the dynamic duo are taking on the criminals of Gotham. Now, Batman Forever. This is a film that divides fans. Some love it, some hate it, some are in the middle. I obviously love it. I don't mind the new visual style or the tone the film is going for. I said it, I think it's pretty underrated. Now, the villains, Riddler and Two-Face, true, they are kind of, I admit, they're a bit of Joker clones. But they are fun, entertainable, wacky cartoon villains. And they do stay true to some of their comic book character part. Like, there's some elements there. Would I prefer a more serious take? Yes, but I don't mind it. And honestly, surprisingly, these two actually work well as a team-up. Like, Two-Face would clearly be the muscle and Riddler as the brains, both wacky personalities. Jim Carrey as Riddler, again, maybe not a fan favorite to many, but I just love this Riddler. How he was on screen with the, with the cane twirling, the one suit that he wears, the red hair, and the origin story. True, I think it borrows elements from maybe the Mad Hatter. Again, I don't like the brain mind control device, but I do like it implies it's making him smarter, and for a villain obsessed with being smart, it fits. I like Two-Face's motivation, just to kill Batman. He just wants him dead. Compared to other villains who want to do something with him, you rarely have a villain that just wants him dead. That's rare, at least for me. Like, that's his sole motivation. And I also like how they still stay true to the whole, the coin, his obsession with the coin, the number 2, and how he's reversed himself as we. I actually like the visual style. True, it's not what I would prefer, but again, it fits the style and tone of this film. I like Chase Meridia. I found her to be a really great female lead. I like what they did with Robin for most of the film. Again, I feel they kind of ruined it in the next one, and true, it doesn't always land, but I don't mind this Robin one bit. I feel Val Kilmer is underrated as a Batman, and I do like they go with the story of him, struggling with both concepts of both the Bruce and Batman side. Rarely they do stories with him. It's always Batman overall, so the fact this was the first one to do so for me really works. Now, with that said, are there things I don't like about this film? Well, yeah. Again, I prefer, as much as I don't mind the lighthearted and the new visual style, again, I still prefer the more darker take. And I don't know whether this was Joel Schumacher's full vision or whether the studio did intervene a bit. Because I definitely know the studio intervened a lot in the next one. Because they had to sell, toys and that to kids. So obviously this feels like a giant commercial. So obviously when you go from the Tim Burtons to this, it definitely can roll things up. And to some people, this is just a bland superhero film. And yeah, I can see that, but I didn't have that much problems with it. I can enjoy this film. It is a fun Saturday morning cartoon come to life. And again, Batman doesn't need to be serious all the time. True, I would prefer it, and I don't mind it when Batman is silly and lighthearted, but that is not always a bad thing. Batman needs to have some humor. I also want to point out there was a song for this film, Kiss from a Rose, which was pretty successful and pretty good at the time, and I actually like it. It's actually a pretty good song. It's like this 90s slow love ballad pop stuff, and it's a good. Again, this film has problems. The visual style might clash with those who prefer Tim Burton's darker take. Some of the comedy is forced, sometimes eye-rolling and cheesy, but I don't mind it. I can get joy out of this film. Again, this film plays nostalgia as I used to watch the heck out of this when I was really getting into Batman. This film introduced me to Two-Face. It introduced me to Jim Carrey. It showed me Robin's origin. So obviously nostalgia is going to play a huge factor into why I actually like this film. It's not a bad film, but yet again, it's not perfect. For me, it's an underrated fun time, and that is, for me, no fault, and that is not a bad thing. Sometimes you just want to have a fun time. again, I would prefer the Tim Burton films maybe over this, but I can enjoy it, and I think you will too if you could just turn your mind off and just enjoy, a fun action adventure. I think you'll enjoy it. Again, it's always up to personal taste and even preference. So there we have it. That was Batman Forever. You already heard my thoughts. Now, after this film, when this film was released, it again divided fans, and the reception was definitely mixed, but was huge hit at the box office. Again, sold huge merchandise. Because of this, with obviously what Warner Brothers Studios wanted, they kind of pushed Joel Schumacher and the creative team to do, well, Batman and Robin. Now, this is a film will be reviewing next, hopefully with my sanity still intact. But until then, this has been the Steven Hour, and until the next one, so long for now.